Alright guys, welcome back to another reaction video. We are going to react to Sydney Watson making hot girls look dumb for views. I think at in the thumbnail we can already see what podcast this is. This is the Whatever podcast. Yeah. What this podcast essentially does is it takes a very small sub portion of women, a very small sub portion of women, and tries to represent all women with that. Essentially, like they take the OnlyFans girls essentially, and try to like use those OnlyFans women to represent all women, which obviously isn't true. Yeah, this podcast is a bit ridiculous. It's one of the more, like, I think, stupid red pill stuff. There's red pill stuff out there that is, like, good advice. Genuinely good advice. But, like, there's also a lot of red pill stuff that is nonsensical. Like, we know some of this stuff is nonsensical. Because in its core, the red pill just shows, the different dating strategies between men and women. But it drops the ball on almost everything else. Aside from that. Yeah, the video should be probably titled differently. Making hot dumb girls look even dumber for views. Should it be called? Because some of these chicks are, in fact, dumb. Like, let's just hope that they stay as a genetic dead end, to be fair. Because some of these people are, in fact, like... Please stay away from me. Anyways, guys, let's get into it. By the way, if you haven't subscribed, I would recommend doing so. You do me a great favor. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. Let's get into the video.
I am fundamentally too old for this.
How old are you? In your 30s? Early 30s? I'm 23 and I already feel too old for this, so what are you then?
Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we
True
launch
and real.
today's video
This is
is
hell.
sponsored by Tim Shanley.
By the way, I love Sydney's videos. I don't watch all of them, but I watch a few, and I agree with a lot of points she has. She's a good girl. She's on the good side, I think.
If you've been here for
For
any
now,
length of
but
time
we
around this
again,
channel
we
on the Hell
do not know.
Gondola, you probably know that I am no great supporter
As usual,
of things
internet
that
people,
divide
so
the sexes.
just like me,
and
we do not know
that some
what
people,
skeletons
both
everyone
male
has
and
in the
female,
closet.
can be total noodle heads and terrible, terrible people. I am consistently of the opinion that men and women, by and large, are better together. So with that in mind,
in almost every aspect, there's a reason why women tend. We can prove this by data. Tend to work in the more nurturing jobs, and men tend to work in the more like technical, like labor heavy jobs, because that's how we both function well together. Raising children, the most like effective way of raising children is a man and a woman together, a mother and a father. If either of them are absent, the child will develop differently than for somebody who has both parents. Men and women are just made for each other. Like, by nature we are made for each other. You couldn't say like male lions and female lions aren't made for each other. They can work independently. That wouldn't work. The species would die out. Funny enough, for humans, we ignore that fact that we would die out if like everybody, like men and women, did their own thing. Many such cases. Like, nature designed us to be a unity. What I'm trying to say.
It'll probably come as a shock to none of you that I'm personally not enjoying some of the new voices and shows and discussion coming out of the gender wars. The fact that we're even calling it gender wars makes me want to eat a handful of spoons. This is actually...
We are at war. Just not with each other. Like, we clearly are at war. Like, not a gender war, a culture war. And a lot of people do not realize that.
actually a topic and a series of issues that I've wanted to explore for quite a while, but I will save this for another day for a deep dive when I can better articulate my viewpoints. Just consider this video as almost like dipping our toes in the
an
the
appetizer.
water. Unless,
an
of course,
appetizer.
you're a foot person,
Let's call it what
in
it
which
is.
case
It's
think of toes at all. Anyway,
Toes?
something that I personally am noticing
Get her away from the Freed Bros!
more and more
Desperately.
is that the commentary and the feedback and the general consensus around male and female issues and our relationship with one another is getting progressively more and more extreme, at least in online circles. And I think some of that, at least in part, can be attributed to this new wave of self-professed online dating shows like Fresh and Fit and the Whatever podcast, of which I am not really a fan. And maybe that's because I am too old for these shows, maybe it's because I am not the target demographic, or maybe it's because they make me want to nail my face to a fridge.
It's because we can look through these setups. The women on these podcasts do not represent the vast majority of women. The vast majority, most women aren't Mia Khalifa. That is not the case.
Frisbee and fling it over a rainbow. If anyone can tell me where that quote is from, you have my respect. If you are not familiar with these shows, which honestly at this point you should be glad of that, they act more or less as a roundtable discussion where the hosts, who are men, invite on several women, most of whom do not know what.
I understand hoes who are men, and it wouldn't even be incorrect, because these men are also hoes. They are just as bad as... It's funny because they are on a moral high ground, but they're just as corrupted as the women sitting around that table. They are just as bad. They are just as horrible.
And together they discuss a myriad of social issues relating to dating and male-female relations for many, many hours. And for whatever reason, guests of these shows seem to get very candid about very personal information that I'm not so sure we need to know.
I'm the queen of it.
Huh? You're the queen, so you're just like really skilled.
Incredibly skilled.
At doing that ahigao?
The cum face, basically.
Is that, oh, that's what it is?
Yeah.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. I will find you and nuke you. Again, she is now Christian. I don't believe her. One bit. Not a singular bit. Not whatsoever.
What I use it for, at least.
Ma'am, please! You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess if you're comfortable enough to put your butthole on the internet, sharing personal information on a podcast probably doesn't feel quite so personal.
What happened to shame? We need to bring back shaming much more. I don't care, male, female, I don't care. Just shame people more for their weird behavior.
It's worth noting at this juncture that many of the women who appear on these shows, particularly on the Whatever podcast, have OnlyFans accounts or make some type of lewd content. But because of the absolutely bananas answers and statements that these women, and sometimes men, are willing to give on this public show, these clips and these videos and these episodes often go viral. And as expected, because this is the nature of the internet, that leads to all sorts of commentary all round. To the point where both Vice and the New York Post have run articles calling out Whatever for inviting on female guests with the intention of making them look stupid.
They are stupid. They just make them look even more stupid than they already seem.
The New York
Because like some of these are in fact like I would say like cut out of context, I feel like.
Post opinion piece titled "Making Women Look Dumb is a Disturbing New Podcast Trend" makes the argument that female guests are invited on to be mocked and belittled. And because of the claims made in this particular piece, several content creators have responded, mostly suggesting that the women make themselves look silly, and this isn't the fault
some of them do make themselves look silly. But it's not just the women. It's the dudes as well.
of the host or anyone else.
Oh,
and
the
to be
quartering.
perfectly honest, some of these creators
My
are my
opinion about
friends,
him is
and while I
neutral.
agree
I don't
with
know the
them
guy,
to
I
an
don't care that
extent,
much.
I only agree with them to an extent. These shows, while entertaining, in my opinion, are not good at producing meaningful dialogues. They are not good at
They don't. Because they don't invite the average woman. Go into like a small like town in the United States. Grab women from there. Like small villages, small towns. There you get an accurate representation of women. This is
bridging the
stupid.
chasm between the
And
sexes
the dudes they invite are also not the average dude. It does not produce any meaningful dialogue.
completely
It's not
frank
meant
with
to
you,
produce
and
any meaningful
again,
dialogue.
I know this is a place
That's
where
not
a lot
what
of
it
people
is
are going to
for.
disagree with me. I don't like the way that the guests are portrayed, both on the show and in the clips following the show. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Making fun of hot, dumb women for views, and how the whatever podcast specifically is contributing to the gender divide. But you know what's not contributing to the gender divide? The
An
sponsor
ad.
of today's video, Tiege Hanley. Are you a man with skin on your face? Do you think
Wait a minute. I assume yes. Am I a man? I believe so. We can continue.
For women. Because for some weird and inexplicable reason, you won't allow yourself
Marcus
to have
Aurelius
baby
is
smooth
my
skin.
homie.
If the
True
answer
and
to
real.
these questions is yes, and you don't want to look like Yoda at some point in the future, then Tiege Hanley has you
Old VTuber I am. Not know how to use VTube Studio I do.
covered. Tiege Hanley helps
What's wrong
men
with
start
Yoda,
and
by the way?
maintain
The
a
man looks
skincare
handsome.
routine by simplifying the entire process. I
At
know
least
you
in the-
lads
in the- in
see
the
how many
prequels.
potions us women use, but it doesn't have to be that way. Tiege Hanley optimizes skincare by offering several different levels of products depending on your skin concerns, whether that's acne, anti-aging, or just general beautifulness. But if you're looking for something simple, level 1 is a great place to start. This comes with all the basics.
Lady, have you heard of washing your face once a day?
A daily
Works
face
really
wash,
well.
an exfoliating scrub, an AM moisturizer with SPF 20, and a PM moisturizer. Because you don't want to look like Yoda. And the coolest part
What if
about
I do
Tiege
want to
Hanley
look
is that
like
every
Yoda?
box comes with an instruction card that tells you when to use each product.
What if
how
I
to
am
use it,
Yoda?
and in what order. And if you decide
What
to
if
become
you
a
watching
Tiege
are
Hanley
Yoda?
member, that comes with lots of benefits, including 20%
What if
off
she's
the retail
Yoda?
price, the ability to pause
She's
or
just a
cancel your
force,
subscription
like
anytime,
an illusion.
and the ability to customize your order. So if you too want beautiful man skin, then click the link in the description for 30% off your first
The only
box
thing I have
plus
now
a
is a
free
scar
gift.
on my
In
thigh
early April,
because
the Whatever Podcast Twitter
um,
account, or X, or whatever this is called these
I
days,
did stupid things.
posted a 27-second video captioned, "OnlyFans girl gets roasted." In it, an OnlyFans creator called Nicolette Nicole was asked how much she makes on the platform. She replied, saying it's tacky to give a dollar amount. Another female guest, Mary, said it's tacky to be on OnlyFans to begin with. Nicole seemed taken aback and responded
I mean, true and real. I mean, true.
that
True.
everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but Mary's response was bad vibes. This clip, along with many others posted by this account, have gained thousands of views and plenty of comments, most of which are people calling out the featured women for some asinine or silly opinion they expressed on the show. Nicole herself even took to the comments of the aforementioned clip to spruik her OnlyFans account. In an interview with Vice a month later, she said that she loved that the clip of her
Can I just say something that I probably... What if I told you that the women on these podcasts paid the dudes who make the podcast so they could be on a podcast to make like essentially it functioning like an ad for their OnlyFans. Is that ridiculous, that assumption? Could I be wrong here? Perhaps, I do not
went
know.
viral because it gained her peer support, social media followers, and most importantly, OnlyFans subscribers. At the end of the day,
See?
this is why I agreed
See? I think that this is actually a business model.
to go on any
For the
podcast
dudes
to
and
increase
the
my social
girls.
media presence, she said. I love it how there's absolutely no standards for becoming a person with followers on the internet. Like, you can have 4 brain cells that you rub together and people will find something interesting
Hey, that's a personal attack. I'll have you know, my 4 brain cells do work really hard to function here. Watching this makes them want to die,
about you.
and I only have 4.
Feeling a little insecure, are we?
A
Yes,
little.
there is some truth to me getting dumber after watching all of these clips. Now,
True
the
and real.
Whatever podcast has always been a little bit bizarre
Especially
to me
after
for
all
a
the
multitude
Niji
of
drama, like,
reasons.
dear God.
The OnlyFans thing,
That
which
is-
we will
that is
circle back
VTuber
around to
brain rot.
shortly, is one of them. But importantly, when these whatever clips started making their way onto my social media feeds, I couldn't work out initially if they were
My TikTok was
representative
full
of
of
the
this
way that
garbage
most
at the
modern
time.
women feel, or if this is just a specially curated group of pretty but not particularly bright young women for virality purposes. If you haven't worked it out already, the answer is the latter. Not ladder, latter. What am I doing? The thing too is that many of the clips that end
Australian,
up
by
going
the
viral
way.
are cut in such a way that guests are portrayed
You do not
poorly,
exist. Australia
worse
is a myth.
than the things that
It has been
actually
created
are
by
coming
the
out of their
government.
mouth, if you can believe it. Or these snippets themselves just eliminate all meaningful context. Sadly, and it goes without saying, but this is obviously a tenet of modern content creation, lots of people do it because audiences simply do not have the time to go and find the original content, pinpoint the moment that that particular thing was said, and understand the context surrounding it. Which means that if you can successfully pull off these kinds of clips and get lots of eyes on them, you become the master of the narrative. It's grim when I say it out loud.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, some of these things are definitely taken out of context.
So with this in mind, I can understand why the writers of the Vice and New York Post pieces arrived at the conclusions that they did. In the months leading up to those articles, several clips from the Whatever podcast went viral on both Twitter and TikTok. These clips range in content from discussions about body positivity to racism to one woman backing and forthing with the host Brian on feminism and patriarchy.
Women have been oppressed since the beginning of time,
How?
and it's natural.
Oh gosh.
Are you
Men also. If we take into consideration that you were forced to go either to in war or get probably annihilated, the majority of men have been oppressed also since the beginning of time. When people say patriarchy, I find it ridiculous because it is just a small portion of people on the planet that control how things run in this world. Like as a man, I have no power over any woman whatsoever. Like physical power, sure, because that's biology. But like, I have no societal power over any woman ever, and I never have any. And that goes for what? 99.9% of men? And there's women in power who abuse their power as well. Like, here in the EU, we have a bunch of women that, like, abuse their power. Here in Germany, we have a bunch of women in politics that abuse their power. That try to benefit only themselves. In order to oppress others, obviously, with that. Like, there is no patriarchy. There is... How would I put this? How do I put this? It's the rich versus the poor, essentially. and I'm not a commie, by the way. I just realized that if you have a lot of money, you can influence the world in a lot of ways. Also in a negative way. And that's what dominates the society. Money.
Really? How?
Yeah, go ahead.
How? You're
the one
asking
saying
me
this is true.
how?
Yes.
No, women were oppressed
That's-
in history.
It's like
but so were
when
men.
people say white people cannot experience racism. The Irish, white people who live closer to North Africa, who were turned into slaves. When people say white people have never experienced slavery, again, the Irish, Europeans. I would even go so far to say that the majority of us, like you listening right here, you have somewhere in your family tree somebody who was at one point a slave. In fact, it was at some point in history where, like, I think was a quote from a some philosophical person where they considered slavery natural. Just wanted to add that.
Not as much as women
now
were.
this is interesting, because if I say, how were women oppressed? You're like, well, it's self-evident, Brian. I shouldn't have to educate you. Yet you've just asked me the same question. You've just asked, how were men oppressed?
We are oppressed in different ways. Like, women were able to work. Women weren't, for example, able to have their own bank account, not able to drive, whatever. But men were had to go to the military. Men had to go to wars. Men do all the hard labor. There's probably plenty of other things. Men get punished for for the same crimes. They get punished harder. They also go into prison way longer. They also have a problem we also have a problem when it comes to like getting the custody of our kids. The thing is, nobody talks about that because we're men. Nobody cares about
Shouldn't you
that,
know?
unfortunately.
One of the more disturbing clips featured a young woman suggesting
Oh
she
no,
broke
not
the
this
hearts
chick.
of men
Oh no,
for
I've
fun.
seen
I
that
didn't
clip.
really like the guy. I more just wanted to see if I could break his heart. And it was fun.
So did you break his heart then?
Just a wee bit.
I want to shove that microphone up her. I want to smash something with that microphone. Hopefully this chick turns into a genetic dead end.
I hope I did a little damage.
Wow. Okay. Why do you hope that?
Where are all the good guys? They are on the graveyard, created by evil exes.
You did a little damage.
I like humbling men.
You like humbling men.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if
my
somebody
pastime.
tried to humble her, she would be
Your pastime
in
is humbling
tears,
men.
complaining on
You do
TikTok.
work at a strip club, so do you humble men there?
No, I take their money.
These videos are terrible, and the things these women are saying are either asinine or absolutely absurd. The writers of the
Evil.
Vice and New York Post
Evil.
articles both argued that these women are set up to say these things, and that a moment is clipped to go viral.
True.
And they're definitely
True,
right about
that
the
as
latter.
well. Like I said,
This show
this is either clipped
perfectly
out of
poised for
context.
clickbait and inflammatory hot takes. But the fact remains that these women are
Again,
making these statements.
it's important to realize. I'm gonna say this a bunch of times. It's important to realize that the women on these podcasts do not represent 99.9% of the women out there.
Of their
Definitely
own
not.
volition. And they seem to either really mean what they say, are saying it for shock value, or they are completely ill-equipped to answer the original questions presented to them. You're probably like, but Sydney, why would they go on the show if they're not smart enough to answer questions? That's their own fault. And you would be right. But they want that OnlyFans subscriber money, my friend. That's the motivating factor there. Also, do you know how obsessed this generation is with being famous? This generation being Gen Z, who I abhor. But where the writers are correct
True
in
and
their
real.
assertions about making women look
But guess who created these circumstances? The millennials! You are also at fault for these circumstances. And I think the X's as well. You are at fault.
stupid comes from
You
omitting
created these
important
circumstances.
context. It doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it happens enough. For example, there's yet again another clip that went viral where a young woman is discussing how many men she has over in a night to do the devil's tango.
It got to a point where like I was 19 and I got kicked out of my house because I was like bringing over 6 dudes a night. Like,
That is so disgusting. That is disgusting.
it
That is
just
really
was
disgusting.
never enough. Enough was never enough. So, yeah.
That is so disgusting.
6 dudes a night?
That is
For
so
like
disgusting.
a consecutive week, yeah. So,
Consecutive?
30? Wait. Is
somewhere
mine-
around there, yeah.
That
And
is
how
so
are you meeting these
disgusting, man.
guys?
Usually dating apps. I have like a
I
hard
wouldn't
time
touch that
approaching them.
woman
I
with a
usually just
10-foot
wait until
pole.
they approach
Jesus
me.
Christ.
So like, would you slot them in like?
You probably stick your wiener inside, and you just evaporate. Ugh. How do you go use your one of the most intimate and loving things on the planet in such a cruel and corrupt way? But maybe that's just my point of view as somebody who waits until marriage.
Like 7 p.m., 8 p.m.,
Yeah.
9 p.m., 10 p.m.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Fucking
And then I would
hourly.
even. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd say I would even like have like my backup guys to where it was
Backup
like, if this guy
guys?
didn't come tonight, then I would invite this guy, and then if he did
This
come,
is so disgusting.
if the first guy
Guys,
did come,
it's
then
been
I'd
fun-
tell the other
nice,
guy, oh, I'm busy,
But
like,
I'm gonna
I can't,
vomit now.
You know, make
I
it
need
or whatever.
I need
But
to
if
vomit.
you watch the full
This is gonna make me
episode, she
vomit.
explains that she had a sex and opiate addiction and has spent a great deal of time trying to recover from that.
Yeah.
You're a sex addict. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what does that mean?
It can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. I'm also a recovered drug addict, but sex was kind of like my switch away from opiates. So once I got clean off of opiates, it just kind of transformed it. So I mean, it's always been a problem.
In fact, during this episode, this woman tells a very sad story about overdosing and how her addiction started with the consumption of adult content at a very, very young age. Let me get this straight. This podcast invites on women
It's still
who
disgusting.
make
I don't
adult
care. It's
content.
still disgusting.
Then it brings on a
Man.
guest who consumed this content from a very young age and had deleterious effects on her. Then the show cuts clips of that woman talking about a very challenging time in her life to basically shame her when the show itself brings on people who make the kind of content that contributed to her doing that in the first place. What the fuck? Now, just to be
I also have to question why she goes on that podcast. Why doesn't she go to any other podcast? Why did she specifically go to that podcast?
clear, I am not saying that this removes her accountability and her responsibility, or even the fact that she was at some point and maybe still is promiscuous. Obviously, the original clip is still very shocking, even with the additional context, and in fact, the whole episode where she's discussing these things is also quite shocking. With the additional context. But at least it explains that there's so much
but it's
more
still mad
happening
disgusting.
that feeds into the
That is,
behavior
I wouldn't
that's
want to
being
be
described
have
in the
anybody
viral clip.
around me like
Information
that.
your average
Not in a million
person
years. This is
will
mad
never
disgusting.
come into contact with
Nah,
because
I'm
they
good.
will never take the time to find the episode and listen to it. I would also like to draw your attention to another recent clip from the Whatever podcast that features
Another
Turning
one.
Point USA personality Alex Clark. In the clips posted to Whatever's YouTube channel, they highlight
What is he doing here? What are you doing here?
where Alex calls the host Brian a beta male for some of his opinions about marriage.
I think in order for me to actually consider marriage, she would have to out-earn me.
Oh.
I think like she would have to out-earn me. That's
You don't want a broke girl?
He's anticipating to say something. He's waiting.
huh?
You don't want a broke girl?
I mean, for a partner, I would date a broke girl, I guess, but if for marriage you want marriage,
It's very kind of you, Brian. It's very kind
I'm
of
very
you.
generous.
You are
guy.
very
I'm
nice.
Like,
I
what's
like
your
it.
what's
I'm very
your what's your
considerate.
ballpark range? Like,
That
you're
she
saying she
has
has
to
to make
make?
over more than you
It's
for
just
marriage.
so
for marriage.
it's
She's gotta
so
make more than
beta
me.
to me to be like a guy to be that scared of women and like marriage.
Bro, it's not beta. It's the most gangster shit
Wait,
you can do
wait,
to
hold
be
on.
like,
It's not the fear of marriage, it's the fear of divorce. Because marriage is a beautiful thing. I want to be married someday. But divorce is scary. Because you get punished for it. Even if you can be like a perfect partner. Well, not perfect, but like you get the idea. You can do most things right. And then one day your partner can decide to just leave you. Men usually don't leave. It
smart
is
about your
scary.
money.
Wait,
just
I'm
like always
confused.
thinking every woman is out to get
The
you and
divorce
manipulate
is
you. Like, that
scary.
is beta shit.
At the end of this clip, Brian remarks that Alex is running away from the conversation right as he is about to answer her question.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to
Yeah,
to
she's
marriage,
correct.
she's got to make more than me. She's got to out-earn me. Oh, of course, Alex runs away when I'm about to respond to her.
I actually asked Alex about this because I watched the clip and I thought, I bet this is deceptively edited. And it turns out that she was getting up to use the bathroom and she shouted off screen, sorry, when Brian made his comment about her getting up to leave. She was by no means running away from the situation. She had to use the restroom and she was promptly coming back, which he acknowledged. He said, I will address her point when she comes back to the table. However, if you watch the clip on its own, you would never think that that was the case.
Like I said,
Alex runs
cut-
away
clip
when I'm
out of
about to
context.
respond to her.
Sorry.
It's okay. Apology accepted. Well, do we have any chats? We don't have any chats. Well, I'll wait to respond.
I will reiterate once again that these women are saying what they are saying. No one is putting words in their mouth. No one is trapping them in a corner to have them articulate these things the way that they're articulating them. I realize that. I recognize
just
that
cut
you
out
will
of
hear
context,
no
which is a
disagreement
problem.
from me. But if even Alex
that
Clark,
certainly is a
who
problem.
is a Turning Point USA content creator who probably agrees with a lot of the viewpoints held by many of the non-mental patient people who participate on that podcast, and she's being taken out of context, what do you think is happening to the No Turtleneck Club? But of course, my issues with the Whatever podcast go a little bit deeper. If you actually sit down to watch one of these episodes, it genuinely feels like one giant struggle session. The reality is that this show posits both sexes at odds with each other, and rather than trying to find a middle ground, it just highlights the absurd positions and opinions of guests, mostly the female ones. The fact here is that either these podcasts intentionally invite on limited intelligence women, or these women themselves take the chance because they want to promote their OnlyFans or build some online clout.
It's not only that. This is specifically set up to only get promiscuous women on the podcast. They don't get like Hannah from like a little farm to go on that podcast. They get what? Stephanie from Miami onto the podcast.
But they so happen to still have limited intelligence. Their opposition, being the men, looks smarter by comparison. These moments are then clipped from the show, circulated en masse on social media, where accounts use them to make wholesale generalizations of women and women's views. However, now that they are bringing on different kinds of people, including the occasional...
I hate that dude. The guy in the blue like jacket. I hate that dude. Because like this chick in white, like next to the other guy in white, essentially triggered him by saying that he can't stay loyal, and he like cries about it, that like he's not triggered, he's just not wired that way. And I'm like, dude, how is it impossible for you to sleep with somebody? That is a mental health problem in this case. That is an addiction. That is the funny part about these podcasts is that the dudes always talk about the promiscuous women, but they don't talk about the men that turn these women promiscuous. Because it's funny. They don't want the women, for example, Fresh and Fit, they don't want the women to sleep around. But they themselves are sleeping around. If you don't want promiscuous women, but you are creating promiscuous women, aren't you also part of the problem? Just asking. Are you not part of the problem? Are you not adding to this problem that we right now have in our hypersexualized society? Like, this guy is a loser.
Smart
he can make
woman,
as much
it
money as
quickly
he wants. He's a
becomes clear
loser.
that this isn't a matter of all women being dummies. Is that the majority of female guests are just not smart. Tweets by the account Liberty Anders sum this up pretty well. Imagine if I invited a lineup of incels and asked them questions designed to make them/men look awful every single week, and then clipped those interviews to further fuel the destruction of male-female relationships. She goes on to write, the girls they get on this podcast are selected by the podcast hosts from Instagram. Most women are very chill and normal and haven't slept with a trillion men. The fact that y'all are starting to believe that women are like this is the problem with this podcast. These kinds of clips/podcasts/commentary that are very negative towards the opposite sex make it very hard to have a normal relationship because your brain becomes all consumed with online relationship discourse and you stop seeing your partner as an individual. Now listen. Obviously, we make generalizations about both sexes because we do, in some capacity, share characteristics within our sex group. That was weirdly articulated, Sydney. But I do agree that people should be judged as individuals rather than as a collective when it comes to sex, especially when you're picking a partner. But I think there's something about a lot of these new age shows and a lot of the new age commentary that absolutely takes advantage of how lonely people are. And that brings me to my last major issue with the Whatever podcast, the OnlyFans thing, which I talked about earlier. But we're here now. If you orbit the gender commentary space enough, something that some of you might have noticed is the overall negative perception of OnlyFans.
Why that clip specifically, Sydney?
Something obviously that I've talked a lot about on this channel. So if these shows, their hosts and their followers call these women out for making OnlyFans content, why would a woman like Nicolette Nicole use the Whatever podcast to gain OnlyFans subscribers?
Because they pay, those women also pay them,
creators,
probably.
Why would these shows keep inviting these women on in the first place?
At least.
One of the most unacknowledged things about the Whatever podcast and shows just like it is that it platforms people who create prawns, while simultaneously not acknowledging that its viewers are consumers of prawns. By prawns, I mean adult content, but you...
Stop it. Stop it. Do not go to the hub. Do not go to any website that shows you adult content. I've been a former addict. I have beaten that. I do not watch that content anymore. And you can too. You can free yourself from this. Trust me.
YouTube boy, let me say that. So prawns it is, my young potatoes. In a way, it's kind of cyclical and symbiotic, if not a little bit parasitic. You see, the shows need these girls. I mean, it's how they get people to watch in the first place.
They need these girls, but at the end of the day, they complain about these girls, which makes zero sense. It's like I said with the dudes and complaining that women are promiscuous, but then they themselves are promiscuous, which makes no sense. Because you cannot complain about it if you are creating it. Because, fun fact, men are supposed to be the more disciplined gender. And if we men, not me, waiting until marriage, but if men would not sleep around. Because I find this funny. Like, they always give this like idea that women have access to sex. I don't agree with that. Because if a woman wanted to sleep with you, you could also refuse. you can also refuse access. On the assumption that there are that many promiscuous women who sleep around. You can also refuse. Which then she doesn't get access either.
And the girls need the show. It's how they grow their OnlyFans accounts. These shows bring on large-breasted, scantily clad OnlyFans women.
I hate this chick.
Feature them
I hate
heavily in the video thumbnails, knowing this alone will garner...
She's a cheater. And I hope somewhere out there, there's an interstellar laser pointed at a house. And somebody, out of mistake, pushes that button. And then it gets fired. I have no sympathy for cheaters. I think they should be turned into a genetic dead end, castrated, and then given them a block for any relationship ever again. I don't care if you're man, woman, whatever. If you are a cheater, I do not want to breathe the same air as you, walk on the same soul as you. I don't want to see you.
Thousands of views. Then these women are slammed with questions they aren't cut out to answer. These moments are then clipped and circulated, gaining both the show and the woman a tremendous...
I hate the idea of podcasts where one side is informed and one side isn't. These podcasts would be way more interesting if the dudes wrote like a timeline of things they want to talk about and then send it to the girls so the girls can prepare. It would look very different. It would look very, very different.
And somehow it's the women who've just been mocked relentlessly that now have a greater OnlyFans subscription base. It's like buying a Pornhub membership to watch a video on that platform about why prawn is bad being presented to you by a bunch of big-boobed, half-naked ladies. It feels a little counterintuitive. And I would like
hypocritical
to make note of
is
the
the
fact
word
that
you're
the
trying
show's
to
co-host
use
is a
here.
sex doll, and Brian, the host himself, has tried to sell pocket fleshlights on the show. I mean, yeah, that's very based, obviously, so based. I'm too old for this. Honestly, all of this reminds me of the trouble the Twitter account Women Posting L's found itself in not too long ago. The account, which usually spends its time posting content of women doing a cell phone, so to speak, started making posts tagging OnlyFans creators. People were quick to point out that these posts were actually ads for the women in question. And this is ironic.
And then he stopped. And then he stopped. Because people were calling him out for it.
Spent its time pointing out women making fools of themselves, mocking OnlyFans and so on, and now it's suddenly promoting the very OnlyFans models it's been mocking. The Whatever podcast is more or less on the same wavelength. Now, I wasn't intending on this video being this long or this disjointed, so apologies for that. This is one of those topics where I have a bit of a hard time connecting my thoughts, so thanks for bearing with me. But I do want to leave you with a few final thoughts. Now, firstly, and I want to be clear about this, I do not like it when shows, regardless if they're an online show or they're a network show on your television, do this to either sex. I don't like when people are taken out of context,
Clipping things out of
and I don't like
context
when videos
is
are
never
cut and edited
acceptable.
deceptively.
It's
I don't
never
care if you're a male
good.
or a female. I don't like that happening to anyone. And the problem with the Whatever podcast and similar shows is that they don't offer meaningful solutions to some of the issues that they're discussing on the show.
Because they don't have meaningful solutions. To stop our society from getting more sexual, both genders would need to work together. But neither want. Even the men calling out that behavior don't want to. It's just a few people like me who
that's not what they're there for.
refuse to
don't
participate
paint all
in
men
this.
or all women with the same brush. If you're not going to try to ameliorate people's lives and you're just going to sit there and have a struggle session, don't try to make it seem like all women share these viewpoints when they don't. And if you in fact want to help people better themselves, I think it's a great idea to bring on people who can assist others in doing so. But as it stands,
Bring on average people. Bring two people who work in a desk job. Just normal men and women. And let them have a discourse.
What these shows are really doing is furthering the gender divide, pitting people against each other, and tarring all women with this terrible, terrible brush. These shows now juxtapose one good woman with multiple bad women, as if the former is the exception and the latter are the rule. And this is just...
The good girls are the majority, the bad girls are the minority. Problem is that we live in like a lot of like bubbles where the bad women are shown way more than the good women. It's like news. You always get bad news. They don't report on good news because they don't get like clicks enough. It's the same situation here.
It's not the case. Like I acknowledged very early on, maybe I am not the target demographic, and maybe I'm too old to understand what's going on here, and maybe a lot of this is going over my head. But if I am understanding it correctly, then I maintain that all of this is incredibly unhelpful and doesn't do men and women any favors. In the end, I know that this kind of content will always exist because there will always be a market for it. But I really am hopeful that something much, much better, much more helpful will spring up in its place. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out Tiege Hanley using the link in the description. Go check them out and your man skin will thank you. Now, open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Have you watched the Whatever podcast? Do you like it? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's actually helpful for both men and women? Have you not watched it? Do you not ever intend to watch it? Do you think shows like this generally are kind of silly or kind of unhelpful or just really out of place in our modern society? Do you agree with my sentiment that relations between the sexes are actually getting worse right now, that things feel much more extreme and much more heightened than they have in years gone by? Do you think that these shows have a place in society? Do you think they don't have a place in society? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you liked the video and you're still here watching at the end, I encourage you to subscribe if you haven't already, or leave me a like or a comment.
I have a point. I'm gonna make a point when she's finished.
The vast majority of the comments,
which I'm gonna make now because I don't see her saying anything meaningful anymore.
If you have a video suggestion, feel free to let me know, and I will see you wonderful, beautiful people.
I've watched clips of it. I know they're out of context. Doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't change the fact that a lot of those things are absolutely disgusting that these women say. And some of these dudes also say very disgusting things. I don't think they're helpful. Because the funny part is, these clips create the women that they abhor. Because women see that. They also see, may even see that those women get more followers through that. And then they start it themselves. These dudes create the women they abhor. And funny enough, the feminists that have similar podcasts, or do similar content, also create the men that they abhor. It's always always in reaction. If you do something, there's gonna follow reaction. There is probably never gonna be like a good equivalent to those shows, because like it just doesn't get the clicks, it doesn't get the attention. That's just the harsh truth. I think a better solution would be if we went back and undid the sexual revolution in some parts. I think we should attempt that the goal of a relationship, the goal of intimacy, is a family. I don't care if you're a man or woman or neither. Or both, or whatever you consider yourself. At the end of the day, I think a family is the best thing you can ever hope to achieve. That's how you counter these things. If normal people ignore it and start creating families. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my reaction. I played a little bit around with the audio. It's not perfect, not by any means. like I said, I'm playing around with this, but like it is currently trial and error. This might be error, this might be good. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.